We all want that running back that's going to finish as the top dog at the position, but there can only be one. We're going to tell you the only players that have a clear path to do that. There's some obvious picks, and let's just get those out of the way. These are the front runners, the guys who obviously are the first ones drafted because they've been there and they've done that, or maybe they're just ready to do it this year. The first one, well, let's start with the guy who was the RB1 last year. That's Austin Ekeler. I'd say he's got a good chance to repeat, doesn't he?
Yeah, can't really find a knock on Austin Ekeler. I mean, maybe he catches less passes, but this guy, RB2 2 years ago, RB1 last year, definitely has a path to be the RB1.
And, you'll hear some people, and I don't know if these are the haters or the nitpickers or whatever you want to call it, saying, well, that was because the Joe Lombardi offense, the dump offs, and that's not going to be there. Really? They're just not going to pass it to Austin Ekeler anymore. If things might change a little bit, especially for the wide receivers, it won't change that much for him. I think he's still got just as good a chance as he did last year. And then the other no-brainer, guy who has been the RB1, and really the only question is he going to stay healthy all year? Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, it seems like it's always the question with him. We know what he can do, workhorse in a great offense, elite pass catcher, but again, can he stay healthy? That's the only thing here. But if he does, has a clear path as the RB1.
And that's really the only reason to really not say I'm sold on him as the first running back drafted is that injury risk. That's the only thing. So I get taking him as your first running back and, banking on him. There's always that risk, but there's that risk with every running back. And then now, if you've been watching Endgame all preseason, that we had to talk about Bijan Robinson. Yes, he has a path to be the top scoring running back, maybe the top player in all of fantasy.
I definitely think he does. This is a generational talent running back. He can do everything. He's got the speed. He can run inside, outside, break tackles, make people miss. He's a great pass catcher. He's a great route runner too, and he's great in pass protection, and he landed in a fantastic spot in an offense that's going to feature him as a weapon behind a great offensive line. Everything is there for Bijan Robinson. Kind of like Christian McCaffrey, where the only question mark is, can he stay healthy? The only question mark about it, Bijan Robinson, is he's a rookie. I'm not worried about it. This guy has RB1 upside.
Yeah, and we kind of laugh it off because it's pretty funny using, he's a rookie running back as a bad thing, as opposed to an older running back being good. So, yeah, Bijan, he's my number one running back in draft rankings. I'm taking him before those other guys because I think he will be the overall RB1. Let's see what happens. All right, now, who are the other contenders? These are guys who have a good chance, but there might be some issues here and there, some question marks. Let's start with a guy who has been and was the number one overall pick in most drafts last year. This is Jonathan Taylor. We know what the concerns are here, and they really haven't been resolved yet.
Yeah, the concerns are, is he really healthy, but also will he be traded? Will he be on the Colts? Obviously, you can't say he doesn't have a path to be the RB1 because we've seen it, but his path probably requires 18 to 20 touchdowns, which he can do in this offense. We know he's a young, elite talent, and if he's still on the Colts, they're probably going to, lean on him to help protect them from their rookie quarterback, Anthony Richardson, who they're not going to ask to throw the ball 35 plus times a game. But he's not a massive pass catcher. He's not going to be a massive pass catcher in this offense. So, yeah, if things break right for him and he has a bounce back year where he averages well over 5 yards a carry and gets close to 20 touchdowns, he could do it again. But he's probably going to take something like that for it to happen.
Yeah, so with Taylor, the big question, where will he play and how does that affect him? I think he stays in Indy because, let's face it, he doesn't have much leverage. He's a running back in the NFL. We see how that's gone so far this offseason. And he's under contract. So he'll probably, at the end of the day, stay because they don't want to trade him unless they get an overwhelming offer, which I think they would have gotten by now. So Taylor on this Colts team, that's the question, with a rookie quarterback and a not too spectacular offense and a rookie head coach. I don't think it happens, even if, he is totally fine, good to go week one, plays in Indy all year. I'm drafting him not as if he's going to be the RB1, but as if he's a high-end, maybe RB1 on my fantasy team. But I'm not drafting him in the first round for that reason. And then another guy who, his issues were resolved, but what Saquon Barkley are we going to see in this year's version of the Giants offense? Do you think that he gets back to vintage Saquon now that he's actually completely recovered and healthy?
I do, and we saw it last year. We saw vintage Saquon last year. Now, we did see some things that maybe we didn't see in the past, like he didn't rip off as many huge, long, 70, 80-yard touchdowns, and he did struggle a little bit in the receiving department. He wasn't, it wasn't like he was bad catching the ball, but he didn't pick up a lot of yardage in the reception department. But we know he's the clear workhorse here. He's an elite talent. He's now, once again, playing for a contract, so he should be motivated to stay on the field and put up great numbers. I definitely think Saquon Barkley is one of the candidates to be the RB1 this year.
I'm kind of putting him in the same category as JT in that I think he is a solid, potentially top 5 running back. I don't feel RB1 overall for him because what the Giants have done and Brian Daboll wants to do is actually be able to pass the ball a little bit more efficiently. They added a ton of receivers. Like, they don't have the best receiving core. It's a little bit more quantity over quality, but they got a pass catching tight end, Darren Waller. They have several receivers who at least could be viable targets, which they really didn't have last year. So I just feel like Barkley's not going to get that same volume of receptions, not enough to surpass those guys who are the front runners. So I feel he's going to be in that contention, kind of tier all year long, but I don't know if he really gets over the hump. All right, then one more holdout, and this is someone who's still actively not with a team. Can Josh Jacobs kind of just squash all the beef, get on the field, and do what he did last year, or maybe even better? Or do you think it just goes all downhill from here?
I still feel like he's going to play. Obviously, the risk that he doesn't play is real because he doesn't have to worry about next year. He could hold out this whole year, not get paid, and then be a free agent next year. But I still think he's going to end up playing. We know he's going to be an absolute workhorse. He'll catch enough passes. He has a chance to score enough touchdowns. Definitely has a case for the RB1 overall. But man, last year, 395 touches and still couldn't finish as the RB1. Is he going to get 400 plus touches this year? I doubt it. So definitely has a case, has the upside for the RB1. But man, it's going to be hard to top what he did last year.
Yeah, maybe it's stupid of me to doubt him for a second straight year after everyone was off him last year and then you saw what he did. But look, there's a lot of red flags here. It's not just the fact he's absent from training camp, giving other guys like Zamir White reps, but also the fact that you should just be worried from the fact that he had so many touches last year, so many carries, and we know historically when guys get over that 350 mark, the following year, they just aren't as efficient. And just the fact that he's kind of opening the door for anybody other than Jacobs to carry the ball, because that didn't happen last year. It was all him. So maybe they're going to learn to kind of live and get by without him. I don't know. I don't feel like if he reports tomorrow and all is, fine and dandy, that he still matches last year's efficiency, because he's also probably not going to be too much of a happy camper because of the way things have shaken out. So I'll be interested to see how that affects his play. And the guy we have to put in this section, because Zeke is now gone, Tony Pollard could finally actually go to the moon. Do you think it happens?
Will it happen? I don't know, but it definitely could. I mean, Tony Pollard checks every box you want to see in the potential RB1. He will probably catch enough passes. I think he gets to that 50-ish mark, which is more than enough to be the RB1. We know he has tremendous touchdown upside because A, he's a guy that can hit a home run anytime he has the ball, but also B, who's taking goal line work from him now? Nobody is taking goal line work from him now. And he's going to get the lion's share of the work here. He's an efficient runner. He's an explosive runner. So he definitely checks every box for the RB1. Kind of like Christian McCaffrey. I think for Tony Pollard, it just comes down to, can he stay healthy?
Right. And that's one thing. We haven't seen him as the guy. Can he handle the load? And, I always talk about this. There's some running backs, especially guys who rely a little bit more on their speed, just aren't as efficient with more volume. So there are some questions still, but one of them is not going to be opportunity. Not only that they let Zeke go, but they didn't sign anybody. He has no competition. And so Pollard has every chance. I'm coming around now to saying that he can be that guy. I don't know if I'm going to put him on the same level as the top 3, but I think out of these contenders, I actually think I like him best. Now it's time to talk about the dark horses. These guys, a little bit more of a long shot, but there's definitely a path for them. And, some people might be surprised to find that we're putting Nick Chubb in this category. A lot of fantasy owners think that he's a strong contender, maybe a front runner to be the RB1. But why is he here?
He's here mainly because of pass catching. It's very rare that the RB1 does not catch a bunch of passes. The last RB1 I can really think of that didn't catch at least 50 passes was Jonathan Taylor a couple years ago. He had 40 catches, but he also scored 20 touchdowns that year. And that's what I think it's going to take for a guy like Nick Chubb. He's going to have to score 20-ish touchdowns this year, because I know a lot of people think he's going to suddenly be a major pass catcher, and maybe he will. Maybe he'll get to 35, 40 catches, which for him would be a huge number. But that's not enough to be the RB1 if he only scores, say, 12 or 13 touchdowns like he did last year. So for him, the path is certainly there, but I think he's going to need a ton of touchdowns to do it.
I think what people are looking at is wrong. That everyone's thinking Nick Chubb without Kareem Hunt. But what we should be looking at is Nick Chubb with Deshaun Watson, because we saw what happened last year. And granted, we've said over and over again, Deshaun Watson this year will be different from last year. He'll be great. And they're going to give him the chance to succeed. That's the problem for Nick Chubb. We saw that they leaned on him so much when it was Brissett at quarterback. And then when Watson came in, they're like, hey, we can pass it a little bit more now. They're going to pass it more now, and it's not always going to be dump offs to Chubb because Watson is not that type of quarterback, and he's actually mobile. He's good at running with the ball. So, yeah, I think what you get with Nick Chubb is what you've got in the last few years, a really good but not super elite fantasy running back. And that brings us to a guy who's been the top running back as well. But, I mean, Derrick Henry, we know the issues here. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, it's the pass catching again. I mean, last year he got way more involved in the receiving game, and he still only had, 33 catches, I believe? I mean, he's going to need to get way, way more involved in the passing game here, and we've seen his efficiency just plummet. He's not the same guy, averaging 5+ yards per carry. He doesn't rip off as many long runs. Obviously, the touchdowns will probably be there, but if he's going to be the RB1, he's probably going to need to get close to 20 touchdowns. Don't see that happening in this offense. Plus, with the addition of DeAndre Hopkins, who knows if they don't just throw a little bit more, which could limit his volume. So, yeah, again, if everything broke perfectly for him, maybe, but at this point, probably not.
I mean, getting Hopkins is good for the Titans. It's not good for Henry, but also, again, I'm drafting Henry still. I have no problem having him on my fantasy team. I think he's going at a very reasonable ADP. But I'm not fooling myself into thinking he's going to go for another 2,000-yard season. It's just not going to happen. There's way too much wear and tear in that body. He will still be fine this year. I think he could still go another couple of years. I really believe that. But I don't think his best year is still to come. And then I feel like we have to talk about another rookie running back, because you know that these rookies fall into favorable positions. If you're going to talk about Bijan, why not talk about Jahmyr Gibbs? A lot of people think he's the best rookie RB in this class. I mean, Detroit's got a great offensive line. Detroit is going to give him the ball because that's why they drafted him in the first round. Is there a chance that maybe he just becomes the guy and it's not a split with Monty? Do you think RB1 is possible?
I mean, anything is possible, I guess, but this is a real long shot in my opinion. But on the one hand, we know he's probably going to catch a ton of passes. He could definitely, he could get 100 catches this year and it wouldn't even be completely shocking, which gives him the chance to be the RB1. But he's going to need probably close to 200 carries. He's going to need to get at least, 800 to 1,000 yards rushing. And he's going to need at least double-digit touchdowns to be the RB1. So what's going to have to happen here is he's either going to, A, have to be so much better than David Montgomery that he just becomes the guy in this offense, or B, David Montgomery gets hurt and they turn to him. But even then, I still have my reservations about whether this guy can even get 200 carries, going to get enough goal line carries. So, yeah, real long shot here.
There's always a chance. Right? I mean, there's the chance because he could just get by on pass catches alone, like you said, boost that PPR value. I don't see it happening. I know he's a talented player. I know Detroit is going to give him opportunity. It's a good system for him. Look, a lot of people thought DeAndre Swift could be the RB1 overall back before we knew that he was made of glass. But, the talent is there. Situation is good. It's a Detroit running back, and his name doesn't start with Barry. I'm not convinced. I'll draft him as an RB2, which tells you I don't see him with a path to the overall RB1. So we just broke down the top running backs in all of fantasy. If you missed it, we already did this for a wide receiver. Who could be that guy who is the number one overall wide receiver in fantasy? Find out.